Welcome to Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible, where I pull from Warhammer 40k lore to help explain biblical lore. And today we're going to be going over the Chaos Sorcerer. But before we get into the video, take the wikis with a grain of salt. I do a regular biblical video on Mondays, and then the rest is Warhammer 40k content. Now, let's go ahead and get started. A sorcerer, or Chaos Sorcerer, is the most powerful type of Psyker found among the Chaos Space Marines and other mortal forces of Chaos. Sorcerers serve the same role as librarians do for Loyalist Space Marine chapters, and sanctioned Psykers are due for the Astra Militarum, though many powerful sorcerers can also be considered psychically gifted champions of Chaos and Sorcerer Lords. Instead of the subtle psychic manipulation and divination used by the Farseers of the Aldari or the strength-boosting powers of the Space Marine librarians, the Sorcerers of Chaos wield death, destruction, and mutation, the mightiest powers of the warp. Sorcerers of Chaos shape destiny itself with arcane rituals and unspeakable pacts forged with malefic entities, the demons of the Empyrean. In truth, sorcery itself differs from other forms of psychic ability because it requires interacting and cutting deals for knowledge and or power with the entities of the warp in pursuit of one's own selfish gain. Through the knowledge gained by such pacts, sorcerers channel the soul-blasting energies of the warp into potent hexes and blasts of weird flame, and they mold the fabric of the material universe with little more than hate-filled curse. Because of their constant exposure to the power of chaos, sorcerers are inevitably haunted by the prospects of eventually succumbing to crippling mutation or insanity. Though they believe they are above mortal concerns, the truth is that they, too, are only pawns. Ain't that the truth? Raised up and then expended by the dark gods for their own amusement. The line between wielding psychic power and true sorcery is a fine one indeed. The chapters of the Adeptus Astartes may seek to deny it, but every time a Space Marine librarian calls upon his mental might, he risks tainting his soul. In the heat of battle, even the most capable Psyker may overreach his abilities, and instead of recoiling in horror from a resultant carnage, he may feel a forbidden thrill. Such emotions are the first step on a path to limitless evil. From that moment on, the Psyker may endure honeyed whispers in his dreams and visions of immortality. Those who succumb to such temptations and make deals for power with the demonic denizens of the Immaterium become true sorcerers, able to channel the malefic power of the warp to its fullest extent, unconstrained by morality or consequences. Sorcerers are forever driven to expand their influence and knowledge. They see themselves as having ascended, no longer hindered by blind loyalty to the corpse god of the Imperium. They become even more callous and inhuman than those who follow them. Some are cold-hearted strategists who vent their hatred upon as much of the universe as possible. Gethmore, the Deceiver, once orchestrated a doomsday cult that resulted in the depopulation of every inhabited world in the Coriolis system. Someone in the comments can tell me how to pronounce that. Yigithmore, something to that extent. Anyways, getting off track. Okay, others act as advisors for Chaos Lords, subtly directing them to their own ends under the illusion of servitude. A rare fear roamed the hidden paths of the universe, unlocking the secrets of the ancients to better plunge the galaxy into the embrace of chaos. Regardless of their goals, All sorcerers revel in the anarchy of the Long War. It takes only a flicker of resistance to spur them into unleashing the destructive energies of the immaterium. Their bitterness manifests upon the battlefield as a palpable force. Red-hot skulls hammer down from the skies. Disease chokes the souls of those nearby, and men are turned into monsters in their wake. The martial prowess common to all Chaos Space Marines is magnified greatly when combined with the weapons of the Sorcerer. Baleful artifacts, saturated with the energies of chaos, that can rip the soul from the body of their victim. The Thousand Sons Legion gave rise to the first Space Marine sorcerers during the early days of the Great Crusade. Even before the Horus Heresy, the 15th Legion of Magnus the Red had a thirst for knowledge of the warp, and that proved impossible to slake and ultimately proved their undoing. In his arrogance and ignorance, Magnus ignored the warnings of his father, the Emperor, and could not stop himself from dealing with the denizens of the warp in search for ever more knowledge about how to extend his psychic abilities and those of his Astartes. Without even realizing it, he struck a pact with the Chaos God Tzeentch that ultimately resulted in the damnation of himself and his legion. Most of the Thousand Sons' number were ultimately reduced to unliving automatons by the rubric of Ahriman, yeah. One of these days I'll learn how to pronounce names. Anyways, though the most psychically powerful among them were able to resist the unforeseen consequences of the ground ritual. Ahriman or something like that. I think that's how you say that. Anyways, many of these ancient sorcerers have now forged pacts with Abaddon the Despoiler, joining the War Master of Chaos in his quest to overthrow the Imperium of Man, and adding the strength of the Rubricae bodyguards to that of the Black Legion. So we're going to read a little bit of the history here. We're not going to go through all of it because there's a lot. But anyways, during the early years of the Great Crusade, many of the Astarte Space Marine legions began to display powerful psychic abilities. One such legion where psychic powers were particularly prevalent was the Thousand Sons. The Astartes of the 15th Legion welcomed this development, for they sought to further emulate the Emperor of Mankind. This development was reluctantly tolerated by the Emperor, who was greatly wary of psychic abilities wielded by anyone other than himself or Malcador the Sigillite. Though the Thousand Sons' abilities proved to be a powerful weapon for the Imperium during the Great Crusade. At the urging of Magnus the Red and some of the fellow Primarchs, this led to the creation of the Librarius Corps within each Librarius Corps within each legion. Why did I say that? Anyways, whose psychically gifted battle brothers would seek the betterment of their legion and the expansion of the burgeoning Imperium of Man. Throughout many of their campaigns, the Thousand Sons made extensive use of sorcerers, and their warp-derived powers would leave whole populations in thrall to their will rather than carrying out a planetary conquest through a costly full frontal assault like the other Space Marine legions. This tactic earned the ire of the Layman Russ, my goodness, of the Space Wolves Legion, who saw anything less than a frontal assault as dishonorable and cowardly. Over the following solar decades, some of the Primarchs voiced their concern that these so-called Psychers, Astartes, were allowed to exist and be part of the Emperor's Great Crusade. Rumors and condemnations began to spread about the Thousand Sons Legion amongst other expeditionary fleets. The most vocal of these detractors were the Primarchs of the Death Guard, Imperia Fist, and Raven Guard legions. These tensions finally came to the fore when the Emperor called for the Council of Nicaea, a great imperial conclave held on the world of Nicaea, in the midst of the Great Crusade that was intended to determine whether or not the use of psychic sorcery represented a boon or a grave danger to mankind in the newborn Imperium of man. Ultimately, the existence of psychers in the Imperium was allowed but tightly restricted under the centralized imperial control, while the potent and unrestricted use of psychic abilities that required dealing with the beings of the warp and was defined as sorcery was officially banned. All right. So we're going to go ahead and end that part right there. And we're going to move on to the biblical side of things. Okay. So with chaos sorcerers, right, they're making deals, right? They're bringing up their thralls and all that stuff, right? Well, it's kind of the same thing here. So Isaiah 8:19, when they shall say unto you, seek unto them that have a familiar spirit. This is a demon that people or whoever it is have a covenant with, or a pact with. So that's why, like with mediums, this is what's going on here. It's a familiar spirit that they're talking to, right? That's why it's familiar. And they're not talking to your dead relative, they're talking to this demon who's been around for thousands of years. Right? But anyways, and unto the wizards that peep and that mutter, should not a people seek unto their God for the living to the dead? So you're basically saying, why are you seeking out the dead? When there's a God who's living. Yeah. 2 Chronicles 33:6. And he caused his children to pass through the fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. So, as you guys can tell, you can probably understand what this is talking about. Okay. Can't bring that up on YouTube, but anyways. Also, he observed times and used enchantments and used witchcraft and dealt with a familiar spirit. There again, going into these packs, right? And with wizards. And he wrought much evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. Yeah. 1 Samuel 15:23. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as the iniquity of idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he hath rejected thee from being king. He's talking about Saul, right? Now, real quick, what are they tapping into? I'm going to bring this up next Monday's video because we're going to be talking about light and darkness. So, let me see if I can find it. Right here. Job 10:21. Job. Wow. Before I go, whence shall I not return? Even to the land of darkness and the shadow of death. We'll see if I can find the psalm. Let's see. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Colossians 1:13, who hath delivered us from the power of darkness and translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. So, this darkness is a force and a place, just like the warp. Okay. So, Exodus 7:12, for they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. So, these magicians and stuff like that, Pharaoh's court, were able to reproduce what Moses was doing, right? Both of their rods turned into serpents. But of course, Moses' rod won, right? But they were able to do this stuff, so that's why you see a lot of mimicking, I'll just say. I'll stop with that. I don't want to attack people. Hebrews 2:14 through 15. I'm talking about Christians who do that stuff, but it's a whole nother video. Hebrews 2:14 through 15. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, He also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is, the devil. So this devil, or Satan, controls this darkness, or had the power of this darkness, right? Or this death, the shadow of death, right? And delivered them who wrought fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. So it's more than just an allegory. This is an actual force, right, that we're dealing with, in my opinion, I'll say. Psalms 23:4. Yea, though oh boy, I forgot I put it in here. So here it is. Psalms 23:4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff cover me. So we have this valley of the shadow of death again. So interesting. Job 38:17. Have the gates of death been opened unto thee? Or hast thou seen the doors of the shadow of death? Now this, right? They're communicating with this darkness, right? They're tapping into it and they're opening portals to this stuff, right? Okay. Acts 13:6. And when they had gone through the island of Paphos, they found a certain sorcerer, a false prophet, a Jew whose name was Bar Jesus. So, did you notice that? He was a false prophet, but a sorcerer. Makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, I'll just say it. How many, quote unquote, pastors, priests, or whoever are actually sorcerers? Just saying. Maybe there's none, but just saying. Okay. 2 Chronicles 33:6. And he caused his children. Oh, wait. Oops. Okay. Matthew 16:26. Pay attention to this part here. So, Matthew 16:26. This is more than just exchanging your soul for money. So, for what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? This part never really gets said, and I don't know why. Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? A pact, right? Anyways. All right. So now we're going to go back into some Warhammer 40k. We're going to go with the common powers here. Just read a few of them here. So, common powers. Chaos Space Marine Psychers open their minds fully to the horrors of the war. Opening doors, right? Stuff like that. Drawing immense power from this nightmare dimension, Valley of the Shadow of Death, right? Like in the Bible. To rip apart their enemies and infuse their allies with strength. Only those already inured to the maddening taint of chaos can wield such raw power without losing all remnants of sanity. Blade of baleful might. The sorcerer's force weapon exhibits a terrifying qualities of destruction and menace. The ritualistic activity required to use this power allows the sorcerer to channel his very soul into the weapon that in response crackles in exchange of harmony and changes the quality into the engine of slaughter. After completing the ritual forging of his weapon, he may enter the fray alongside Chaos Champion and Chosen alike, reaping souls with matching fury. So, he's right here. So, okay. And to use this power allows the sorcerer to channel his very soul into the weapon. Right here. Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? And then, I won't bring that up. Never mind. So a sorcerer cuts through his enemies with unnatural vigor. he takes a moment to make an offering to the dark gods in all their glory. With the dead at his feet and his weapon held high, he utters a prayer and sends a soul to its damnation. Should the dark gods take notice of this ignoble sacrifice, he can expect a reward for the fruits of his unholy labor. The dark gods are fickle, however, and at times have a strange way of responding to their worshippers' offerings. So there's quite a bit there. We'll do this one. Hex of decrepitude. In the warp, time flows according to its own unknowable pattern. Such fearing. Oh, what? Huh, must have read somewhere else. Okay. Um, Unknown about spacefaring vessels travel the galaxy precisely because of this property, arriving at their destination in a matter of solar weeks rather than over the course of generations. A powerful sorcerer may call upon such temporal effects to age his enemies prematurely by manipulating the eddies of the warp. So, say diabolic strength. The unholy energies of chaos course through the recipient's, swelling his frame with the strength to tear a tank in two. So, and one thing to think about is in the Bible, there's Samson, right? Who had the power of God, right? You would think that the enemy has this as well. This is where, like, you would get your berserker stories from and stuff like that, where they would do. I don't. YouTube would probably kick me off if I said that stuff. Anyways, so we're going to go ahead and end it there. Sorry for the digressing and all that stuff, but I'm gonna try to work on that. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day.